Hello everyone, my name is Jordan Stark. I'm the Marketing and Brand Specialist for CFC. I want to thank all of you amazing intended parents for joining our webinar today. Our CEO, Leia Swanberg, is here and she will be leading the webinar on how to prepare for birth as an intended parent. We are just waiting on a few more attendees to join us. Before Leia gets started, I would just like to tell everyone that we are recording this webinar today, and everyone who is registered will be sent a direct link to the video recording by email. We will also be sharing the webinar on our website, our YouTube, and our Facebook page, so you can view at any time. We will also be taking questions throughout the duration of the webinar, and Leah will be answering everyone live at the end. We ask that if you do have any questions, to please use the questions tab or the chat tab to ask them, and you can ask them at any time during the webinar. It looks like more of you have joined us now, so I'll pass you on to Leah.
Sort of things I highlight for people every day are, would you be comfortable with your surrogate delivering at home, her home, your home, an Airbnb? What would that look like for you? Because most agencies will have that listed on a surrogate's profile. Does she plan to deliver at home? Does she plan to deliver at a birth center? So a birth center is sort of an in-between of home and hospital. So it's typically a freestanding building, either attached to or within very close proximity to a hospital. It is staffed by midwives and birth professionals, and gives you a space to birth that isn't your surrogate's living room or your Airbnb, but as well provides the opportunity for you to get quite easily and quickly to a hospital should an issue arise. So, looking at that on a surrogate's profile is really important. And then as well, looking at how her deliveries occurred in the past. So did she have previous cesarean sections? Did she have vaginal deliveries? And the reason that's important is if a surrogate has had 2 or more cesarean sections, the chances are high likelihood, over 95% chance, that she will move forward with another cesarean section. And so, understanding what that looks like for birth in terms of, the opportunity to plan and sort of know in advance the birth date of your child, for many people is reassuring. For others, when they think of a cesarean section, they immediately think of, well, if only one person can be in the room, would that be the surrogate spouse, partner, support person? Or would I be able to be the first one to meet my child? And so really thinking about that as you're looking at surrogate profiles. And then when you begin communicating with the surrogate, asking her early on, hey, I see you've had 3 kids. I'd love to know what birth looked like for you. I'm super curious, because there's a difference between curious and nosy. And so really to come at this with, with a mindset of curiosity, and hearing about her births, and it will absolutely reassure you. And if it doesn't reassure you, and does leave you terrified, that is absolutely normal. Many intended parents that I speak to have never been at a birth. They don't really understand it other than what they see on TV, or maybe they've, somehow stumbled across a YouTube video that they can't unwatch. But I do want people to know this. Birth is not a medical process. Birth is an opportunity for a baby to come into this world. And so we can medically, create, or we can create a medical process. We can create an at-home, sort of intimate process. And you will do that with your surrogate based on the experiences that she's had previously, based on the experience that you bring to this. And so I would say to really just begin speaking about it early. If you are new to surrogacy, or sort of haven't found a surrogate yet, really begin dreaming about your birth and those moments with your baby. When I talk about birth planning, I talk about birth planning, and then I talk about post-birth planning. So what do those moments look like for you after your baby is born? We all hear all the time about skin-to-skin contact. If you haven't heard about it, Google it. an amazing opportunity for your baby to just tuck in with you, literally skin to skin, to learn your scent, hear your heartbeat rather than the surrogates, to connect. And outcomes of babies who have this, first hour with, just tucked in with their parents, really is absolutely known to have amazing health benefits, and for your bonding, for your opportunity to connect with your baby, it's literally everything. So you're matched, your surrogate is pregnant, she's going to some medical appointments. If you're unable to be at those medical appointments, it's really important to talk about those medical appointments. And again, from a place of curiosity. So, hey, I know you have a doctor's appointment coming up. I'm super excited to hear about it. I would, do anything to be there. Unfortunately, I live so far away. Is there any chance I can be a part of that appointment? Could you ask your care provider if I could Skype in or FaceTime in on your phone? And, some care providers are very open to that, and some are not. However, if you have the opportunity to attend at least one medical appointment with your surrogate, I think it's very important so that that care provider understands what your preferences are post-birth, what your cultural values and beliefs are around birth and around, this post-birth period of time. So really, really, talking about the pregnancy as much as possible. And I know for many people that can be a little bit scary, but definitely dig in with your surrogate on what the doctor has to say at appointments. When we start to look at at birth planning, many people begin that around 25 weeks. I know for us, our agency sends out a birth plan, birth preferences sheet at the time of birth, at the time of 25 weeks to prepare for the time of birth. And that document goes to the intended parents and the surrogate. If you're on this webinar and you're working with another agency or you're working independently, please email me. I'd love to send you that document. It's absolutely fantastic. And it covers things like, and these are items, you may want to write down now. You may want to just start beginning to think about. Who's in the room? If your surrogate has a doula, do you know this person? Have you communicated your preferences to this person? It's very important that if this doula is here to support the birth of your child, that she is also here to support you, and that you've had some time to connect with her and to speak with her about your birth preferences and your understanding of birth, and maybe where you live in the world, birth looks very different, and so speaking to the doula around that 25-week mark as well would be something I would suggest. Has your surrogate talked to you about birth photography? She may want to capture this beautiful moment. You may not be so comfortable with that. So again, it's something to really begin to talk about so that, when you arrive at the hospital, you're not walking in on a room full of strangers or a room full of people that you didn't necessarily know were going to be a part of this most amazing, beautiful, intimate process. And so having that conversation with your surrogate of, who's going to be there. And then I think as well, talking to her about her preferences around medication, so that if an anesthesiologist walks into the room and says, I'm here to give you your, hey, Jenny, I'm here to give you your epidural, and they clear the room, that you understand what an epidural is, what it's used for, why it's being used, the safety of it when it comes to the health of your baby. Doing, some research ahead of time is really going to be key to, you feeling in control during the delivery of your child or children. And so having that birth plan to talk about who's going to be there, your surrogate sort of preferences around medication, and, that can change. I know for myself, I've had medicated deliveries, unmedicated deliveries, cesarean sections, And so having that conversation, as well, asking her, hey, when are you comfortable with us being in the room? Like, can we be there all day and hang out with you while you're in labor? Or would you prefer we kind of hang out in the visitors area and come in, as soon as our baby is being born? And, for many people, myself included, we make assumptions about things and people's level of interest in us being a part of their birth. And so I think asking those questions is really, really important so that you know exactly what she's thinking. Another thing to really start considering around the 25-week mark is, are you going to collect the cord blood? And, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, Google cord blood collection. Or are you going to do delayed cord clamping? Again, if you're not sure, please Google that, delayed cord clamping. There's a lot of information on the internet about the benefits of delayed cord clamping. However, you can't do delayed cord clamping if you're doing cord blood collection. And so really weighing the two, because that is a decision for you to make. That is not sort of the surrogate's decision, as it directly impacts and relates to the health of your baby. And when we're looking at who makes the decision in the delivery room during the birth, generally that is the surrogate. And so you want to have the conversations with her upfront and early around the pregnancy, the birth, what is really important to you during a birth. If you have, cultural, ideals around birth, sharing that with her. I know for myself as a surrogate, I was super comfortable talking about birth when I talked to surrogates. When I did this webinar a couple of weeks ago with surrogates, we had, many of the questions we had or I received later were questions from surrogates going, well, of course I would do whatever it is the intended parents would like. But my intended parents are really nervous about talking about the birth with me. How do I bring it up? And so my suggestion to you as intended parents is bring it up. Bring it up, talk about it, share with your surrogate what is important for you around the birth, and to really, share your fears, your excitements, share with her whatever it is that is important to you around the birth. Another thing to consider in the birth plan is, how are you planning to feed your baby? And when I say you feeding your baby, it is your baby, and you are going to be tasked with this great responsibility of how you will feed them. Are you an intended mother and you're interested in inducing lactation so that you can breastfeed your baby? If that's something, sorry, my nose is so itchy. If that's something you're interested in, Google Jack Newman induced lactation. That's Jack Newman induced lactation. He's a lactation specialist in Toronto. He is world renowned. He has an amazing protocol that many of our intended mothers, nearly 50% of them, have used in order to induce lactation, to breastfeed their child immediately upon the child's birth. If that isn't something you're considering, but you've talked about breast milk with your surrogate, what does that look like? Because that's part of the birth plan, because when your baby's born, within a couple of hours, they will be hungry. And so feeding them and having that plan ahead of time is really important. So would that mean your surrogate is going to hand express or pump colostrum? Does that mean your surrogate is going to breastfeed your child? Does that mean your baby is going to receive formula? And if they are, will that be formula that the hospital provides? Or will that be formula, oh my gosh, sorry, or will that be formula that you bring as you're wanting your child to have a specific type of formula? So again, these are things around the 25-week mark we really suggest beginning to do your research on. And I'll tell you, surrogates love it when intended parents say to them, I'm doing my research on how I'm going to feed my baby, or I'm doing my research on the car seat to purchase. They love it. And it just shows for us as surrogates your commitment to the end goal of having this baby. Because often around the 25-week mark, things kind of get quiet, the pregnancy's going on, and not much is new, and you already know the gender likely if you're finding out, and you're into that safe zone of where viability happens between week 24 and 25. And so things kind of calm down. So these are great questions to ask your surrogate. Another thing is, to sort of begin to think about the birth is, how are you going to get your baby home? Hospitals in Canada, anywhere in Canada, require you to have a car seat that you bring to the hospital, that you place your baby in. It is the most stressful moment in the hospital, clicking this baby into this car seat, because they're so small and fragile, and you're, have this nurse standing looking at you, wanting to make sure you can do this. And oftentimes, it's a little bit tricky because you're sweating and it's hot in there and the air is dry and you just want to do this right. But if you're traveling from somewhere else in the world, you do need a car seat that meets the CSA standards, the Canadian Safety Advisory, I think, Canadian Safety Association, for a car seat. So if you are traveling, what we suggest is if you're renting a car in Canada, to use their car seat, or to purchase a car seat, or to ask your surrogate, because many of our surrogates, or many surrogates, all surrogates have had children, and often they have a car seat kicking around that you could use. But you will need to bring a car seat to the hospital, and have it available for them to watch you place the baby in before you leave. So some of these items you may already be thinking about. Some of them may have not even hit your radar, and we understand that. And so talking to us, talking to your agency, really, really is important. Or other people that who have had children. Hey, what was it like for you when you went to the hospital and had your baby? Or other intended parents on Facebook or other, sites on social media, really asking people's opinion on formula or car seats, or, ways in which they manage the hospital piece, is really a great idea. If you are living in a different community to your surrogate, we suggest to travel to her around week 37 or 38 weeks. At that time, you have enough time to sort of get settled in your Airbnb or your hotel. You have enough time to make an appointment with the social worker at the hospital, if your surrogate's hospital has a social worker. And when I talk about social workers, oftentimes people, go, well, aren't those the people that, apprehend babies in hospitals? And aren't those the people that, judge people's parenting styles? And, I'll tell you, the social worker in the hospital is an advocate for you as prospective parents, and it's your surrogate, for your surrogate as a woman who is going to have a baby, and then not have a baby because this baby is now yours. And so if there is a social worker available in your hospital, it's very important that you access her. You talk to her about rooming in or not. And so, in Canada, the moment the cord is cut, this is your baby. However, the hospital often in Canada will say, here's your baby. We have no room for you here. Room in with your surrogate until she goes home. Which, by the way, on average, a Canadian woman delivering a baby leaves the hospital within 12 hours. And when the surrogate leaves, you leave. So for many intended parents who come from places in the world where, there's 5 days in the hospital and then a nurse comes to their home and there's all this support, in Canada, we really see birth in a very different way, in that it is not a medical process or procedure. And so, once you're feeling up to it, head home. The exceptions to that are if a surrogate had a cesarean section, generally she'll stay for 48 hours. And again, intended parents could stay as long as she stays if you're sharing a room with her, or often intended parents travel home from the hospital or to their Airbnb or hotel, sort of that same day of delivery. So again, something to really think about, talk about, and understand that the social worker in the hospital is really going to be an advocate for you as you develop your post-birth plan, as you travel back to your Airbnb or your hotel. If there's something that you need, often the social worker is the one that will refer you to public health. So there are public health nurses in every community in Canada that will follow the health of your baby. So she may come to your home and weigh the baby. She may give you the address of a public health unit where you can go and have your baby weighed. Because as you'll find out when you have your baby, it is all about their weight. It is all about how often they poop. It is all about how many wet diapers they have, how often you feed them. And it's crazy because we would think if our baby was sleeping, oh, we just want to let them sleep. That's so great. I'm going to catch up on my rest. But really, it's, waking your baby up every 2 to 3 hours to eat, to ensure that they are gaining weight and they are pooping and peeing and, a happy, healthy baby. And I know I'm jumping around, but I really am trying to sort of put together all of the topics that I want to cover. So, the majority of surrogates will have a vaginal birth. If your surrogate does not have a vaginal birth and she's required to have a cesarean section, who's going in the room? Now, you may have planned this ahead of time because she's having a repeat C-section, and you know that her spouse or partner is going in, or she has been gracious and said, hey, you come in, this is your baby. But again, to know that even if the plan is a vaginal delivery, her 5 children have been born, with a vaginal delivery, very simple, just to know that even when you make a plan, the plan can change. And so that's why we call it a preference, not a plan, or we try to, because we all have preferences of how the birth is going to go, and it will be this magical, beautiful, sacred experience. And then birth punches us in the face and we're making decisions very quickly and the doctor's clearing the room, and things can occur. And so I want to reassure you that having your support person, if you are an intended mom and you think that the intended father is just going to sort of hang back at the Airbnb or maybe not be there, I would suggest he's there, whether he's in the hall or in the room. Having your person, your surrogate's going to have her person. You will need your person. If you're a single person embarking on this process, bring someone to the birth. Hire a doula, have a CFC staff member. I attend probably, I don't know, a lot, maybe 15, 20 births a year, but it's my favorite part of my job, other than running retreats, being at embryo transfers. Well, there's lots of favorite parts, but birth is amazing. And even when it is a punch in the face, it's really just about being able to shift gears, being able to really, move through the process, understanding that it is a preference, not a plan. And so on that, we'll say to come 37, 38 weeks, but if your baby comes at 36 weeks, 5 days, you may miss your birth. And I don't say that so that you get on a plane when your surrogate's 25 weeks and you sit in Canada or you sit in BC and you live in Ontario. But what I am saying is that, from 30 weeks on, leave your cell phone on at night, even if it's on do not disturb, but bypass this for your surrogate's phone number. Make sure that if she calls you or I call you or your case manager calls you, that you are ready to get on a plane. The hospitals want to see you here within 24 hours of the time of birth. And for many of you, those of you who live in Australia, Israel, some places that are super, super far, that means you get the call, you drop everything, you get to the hospital. It is vital that you are there as soon as possible. And oftentimes intended parents, aren't sure, well, my baby came so early, they're going to stay in the NICU. Come now. The answer is come now. This is your child. They need your touch. They need your scent. They need you to advocate for them. But if it's going to be 24 hours and your baby's already here, call your lawyer immediately. And the reason I say that is you need an alternate decision maker in Canada. Should your child need a blood transfusion, should your child need some type of medical interventions, and for many of you, you may get on an airplane that is 12 hours without communication. So letting your lawyer know you're getting on a plane, and these are your preferences around your baby's health, it's very, very important. Your lawyer is your advocate, and so let them advocate for you if your baby comes early. Now, when your baby is born, um, intended parents often ask me, what do I bring to the hospital? We bring a car seat, you bring clothing because they don't have clothes for your baby. They have like a little nightgown, but you'll want to get your baby cozy in their own clothes. Car seat, clothing, diapers. You'll want to bring formula if you're planning to formula feed. And they do have formula at the hospital, but this is again if you have a specific type of formula that you're wanting to use. And yourselves, your insurance card. If you are coming from out of Canada and you will have insurance, my suggestion always is to give the insurance information to the hospital. If you give them your credit card information, they will bill your credit card. If you give them your insurance card, they will bill directly to your insurance. And it's important because hospitals often will overbill if they have the opportunity to. They will just bill it and hope that you can get it back from your insurance company. Or if you provide them the insurance card information, they will then have to negotiate directly with the insurer. And that's so important. We have had clients from all over the world that have had insurance, work in their favor. So intended parents who have had children who require open heart surgery, require other interventions. It's so important that the hospital has that information. And whether you provide that to the social worker upon your meeting, whether you provide that to the nurse when your surrogate is checking in, either way, it's very important that the hospital has this information ahead of time or at the time of your baby's birth. So please, if you have questions about when to provide the insurance information, connect with your case specialist, connect with your lawyer. They're very familiar with it as well. If for some reason your insurance has been canceled, you don't have insurance, you're not sure what I'm talking about, you're working with another agency or independently, please reach out to us. We would love to introduce you to Virginia Hart at Art Risk Insurance. She has policies for everyone, and she has the opportunity to put insurance in place at various times throughout the journey. So immediately upon your child's birth, you'll be taking photos, you'll be tucking in with your baby. Also, call your lawyer right away. He or she needs to know that your baby is born, and the information that they need to begin the post-birth paperwork, which will name you as parents, is your baby's full name, which is often hard because we see this cute baby and now we're not sure if the name that we picked is a good fit. But they need to know your baby's full name. They need to know the doctor or midwife who delivered. So oftentimes the midwife or doctor that you had in mind is not available. And so they will need to know who that person was that delivered your baby. They'll need to also know, obviously, the name of the hospital. Has your surrogate's name changed? Did she get married while she was doing this journey, or is everything still the same? But getting that information to the lawyer can allow them to begin all of that paperwork immediately, which is so, so important in order to get you home or back to your community as quickly as possible. Okay. I just want to double check my notes. If people have questions, please begin to type them into the chat box as I'm kind of wrapping up here. Many times intended parents will contact me and say, what if we're at the hospital and I disagree? What if my surrogate is hearing from the doctor and I'm in the room that we should do a C-section, and she's saying, no, 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 um, I want to keep pushing. Who is that ultimate decision maker? And I want to tell you really clearly, there is no answer for that. Well, this is her body, this is your baby. And so having a clear communication process throughout your journey is vital. It is so important that you are communicating along the way, that you are a team, that you are a partnership, that she feels valued, encouraged, and supported throughout this entire journey, so that when she's making decisions about her body, that your baby and your preferences are top of mind, which is why we send this birth plan at 25 weeks, so that you can share it, so that she fills her portion out, you fill your portion out, you review it, and that if she says something in there that you're like, whoa, you have the opportunity to go, hey, curious. And if you start out your question with, hey, I'm curious, I've never been at a birth, but when I read you want to do XYZ, I don't know what that means. Can you tell me? Can you fill me in? Or when I read that you are wanting to have a home birth, but we've been talking about a hospital birth, I get nervous. And so I just am curious as to, what's changed for you. And really having a dialogue with your surrogate based on your commitment to her, your curiosity, putting this health and safety of your baby, the health and safety of your surrogate as paramount is really, really the key. And a couple of great resources, or one great resource in particular, is the book The Birth Partner. It's a fantastic book by Penny Simkin. It is a book that is kind of for doulas, for dads, for those supporting people in birth. And I would suggest everyone read it, so that when you are there with your surrogate, you are really embracing the beauty of birth. And you're embracing, supporting, and honoring her. And you just have some general knowledge of what's going on. Because I've been at many births where people are standing sort of up against the wall like this. Like literally, you see them kind of backing up, because birth, although the most beautiful, miraculous experience of life, it is very intense. It is exhausting. It is amazing, but it is a lot. And I don't necessarily believe that everyone is prepared for it. I know, having my own children, I was not prepared for it. Even my fifth that I had 4 years ago compared to my first that I had 28 years ago. I mean, it's a completely new experience every time. And so to really just sort of be prepared, The Birth Partner is a great book. There's lots of online resources of how to support your surrogate. Many intended parents will hire a doula or a childbirth educator to do a course in person. And if you don't live in your surrogate's community, that's fine. This will be a class for you as intended parents to learn how to A, support your surrogate during delivery, and B, how to create connection and bonding with your baby, which sounds like it should just happen. And for many people, it does. For many people, it doesn't, because they have been waiting for this moment for so long that the moment comes and it can be paralyzing. It can be terrifying. It can be tough. It can be hard to really just even figure out the feelings associated in that moment. And so having that childbirth education class and having that talk around, what those few hours are going to look like for you as new parents, or for those of you adding to your family as parents again, to really just be gentle with yourselves, and get as much information as you can, so that you feel empowered and ready for this amazing, amazing, amazing experience. I want to check. I believe that is all of the information that I have for you. But I would love, Jordan, are there any questions that I can answer for people?
Yeah, we've got quite a few questions here. I'll start with the first one from an intended parent from Montreal. They say, regarding the birth planning, home birth specifically, we have decided with the surrogate that as long as everyone is on board, we are good with it, meaning we will support whatever our surrogate decides is good for her as long as it's medically validated. Home birth definitely is not popular in their country, and we feel it's mostly a cultural thing. So they are wanting to know that they will be having a meeting with the midwife to get to know more about the process. They're wanting to know what are your thoughts on their approach and home birth in general.
So I think as well, as I've talked about a lot, coming at it from a place of curiosity and asking these questions. When is a home birth indicated? When is a home birth not indicated? Have you, as a midwife, supported a home birth in which a surrogate and set of intended parents or intended parent are involved? Where would you anticipate a home birth should occur when there is a surrogate delivering who will likely need to rest or will need to rest post-birth, and intended parents and their baby wanting to give her enough space? And so really planning out, where is this home birth going to occur? How will we create intimacy with our baby while allowing the surrogate to rest? Does she live in a one-bedroom apartment, or does she have a large home that can accommodate space for everyone? Will her children be present? And so some of these questions are for the midwife, but some are for the surrogate. Will her children be present? Can we provide support in the way of a childcare provider to come with us, or a doula, someone to come to support and care for her children while she is delivering our baby, so that we can be fully present with her as our baby is being born? Also asking, what is the distance between her home and the hospital? Typically there's like this 45-minute, you have to be within 45 minutes of a hospital to have a home birth to qualify. Does she live within that sort of geographical distance? And then if we are planning a home birth and she's in labor and we're in her home, what would be indications that we would need to transfer care to a hospital? Those are the questions that I would have myself if I were to be involved in that meeting. So I think those are some of the things you'll start to sort of ask yourself, ask your surrogate, talk to the midwife about.
Great. They had a second question as well. They would like to know, does the person that delivers the baby need to sign anything for the declaration of parenting?
Yes, absolutely. So around the 25-week mark, you'll connect with your lawyer or a lawyer in the province in which your surrogate lives. And that lawyer will have a bunch of paperwork that you will begin to fill out even before your baby comes. And the surrogate as well will provide information prior to your baby coming. And then there will be documents for her to sign. There will be documents for you to sign. And so your lawyer will manage all of that. And as well, we're happy, or any agency is happy to become as involved as possible, or as involved as you may need, to ensure that everything is signed and that everything is taken care of in a timely fashion.
Great. Another intended parent is wondering, after the baby is born, do they have to stay at the hospital for 1 or 2 days, or do they get to go home that first day?
So often intended parents will go back to their Airbnb, their house, their apartment, their hotel, whatever that is, that day. And so it really just depends on how the delivery went, the health of your baby. The nursing staff or the physician or midwife will really talk you through risk benefit of traveling home that day or staying in the hospital. I will say, if you're purchasing insurance, insurance is only for a catastrophic event or a medical issue. If your baby is fine and staying for 24 hours in the hospital, you won't add them to your insurance. However, you will pay the cost of that overnight stay in the hospital, which could be as low as $700 in, sort of a smaller rural hospital, up to $3,000 if it is in a larger center.
Okay. Brian is wondering if you would be able to repeat the name of the insurance specialist you mentioned. Is that Virginia?
It is. It's Virginia Hart at Art Risk Insurance. She's who we, everyone speaks to, and so we are happy to make that introduction so that you can get insurance in place. But as well, if you do live outside of Canada and are required to purchase a policy, I often suggest to intended parents to review their policies because many large organizations now have coverage if you were to have a child outside of your jurisdiction, and so you may not need insurance at all. So it's definitely important to look into, even prior to engaging in the surrogacy process.
Great. We can also maybe include some information about that in the email with the recording of this webinar.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, and we have Emily and Dom from the UK. They are saying that you talked about the departure process from the hospital. Our surrogate is very keen to have a home birth. Could you tell us a little bit about what happens after the baby is born in those scenarios? For example, how that differs from hospitals?
Sure. So in a home birth situation, the midwife will register the birth in an identical way. So the birth is registered either by the midwife's clinic or by the hospital. So that process is the same in terms of the certificate of live birth and that piece. The piece that's different is where will she deliver and how will you leave? If your baby is due in December in Calgary, Alberta, where it's minus 40 degrees, are you really going to put your baby in a car seat and drive anywhere 4 hours after the birth? Or are you now tucked in at her house for 24 hours, which could be lovely, but may not sit well with you in terms of, am I wanting to be in someone else's space while they are really sort of going through the healing process? Their kids are there, it's hectic, it's noisy. So really sort of sorting through that for yourself as to when you would leave. Would you guys have an Airbnb in which, we find for a lot of people that do home birth is they rent an Airbnb for a couple of days around the time of the birth, and they often will rent like a duplex or so that there's two places, so that the intended parents are literally right beside where they're going to go. Or intended parents will rent an Airbnb, especially for the first couple of days, very close in proximity to the surrogate, so that they can in fact get in their car and get back to their place to begin resting. But if your baby is born at your surrogate's home and is healthy, the midwife will check out your baby prior to you leaving her home. And then midwives in Canada will follow your baby for the first, they'll come to you the following day after the birth, and then a few days later, and then a few days later. So you will have that continuity of care, at your place or even at the midwife's clinic to check in on your baby.
Wonderful. That's all of the questions that we received today.
Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for being a part of this webinar. I had a lot to cover, so I know I spoke quickly, but if you have any further questions about birth planning or just want to get on the phone with someone to talk through it, whether you're working with Canadian fertility consultants or you're working independently or with another agency, I am literally a phone call away and would love to speak about this process and the end of your journey. So I hope that you're all well, and please send us any questions that you have.